for this second webinar in our new webinar series. I wanted to personally take a couple of minutes just to introduce myself and our organization, and also introduce this webinar and my esteemed colleague, Myra Henry. So my name is DeEtta Jones, and I am the principal of DeEtta Jones and Associates. We are a consulting firm. Myra, if you advance one more slide, you'll be able to get a sense. Oh, nope, there's a whole, nope, never mind. There was another one with our whole consulting firm there that has a team of us who are really here in order to be able to provide services to individuals and organizations to help you do your best work, as far as being a leader from anywhere in the organization, managing yourself or resources, teams, departments. We are here to effectively equip you with the skills in order to be as effective as possible in your individual and organizational endeavors. We also do quite a lot of work working with organizations at the leadership level in order to think about things like organizational transformation or having a positive impact on organizational culture, or really thinking about some of the processes and experiences associated with effectively navigating change management. So those are a few things about DeEtta Jones and Associates. We are virtually located all over the place. So we all come in from different places and have a variety of different strengths and experiences that we are excited to share with you. And this webinar series is really an opportunity for us to be able to highlight some of the topics that people ask us about most often, and some of the expertise associated with the amazing team that we call the DJA team. Today, the amazing team is going to consist of being able to work with Myra Henry. Myra Henry is a DJA consultant. She's also an administrator at the University of Rochester, and she is an experienced facilitator, an administrative change agent who has a passion for integrating diversity, equity, and inclusion principles with organizational systems. She's worked closely with a variety of different committees inside of her organization and across higher education, with medical centers, with not-for-profits, with community agencies, all to develop and deliver professional development and leadership training and other experiences. So we're really excited to be able to have Myra working with you today. She's a very values-rich leader and practitioner, and will bring a lot of insight to us. Our topic today is dialogue circles, build engagement, competence, and confidence. And so enjoy this topic. We hope that you let us know how this is going, and that you give us feedback through Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or LinkedIn. We very much look forward to hearing from you. And Myra, thank you in advance. And now I hand off to you.
All right, thank you, DeEtta, for that wonderful introduction. And hello, good day to everyone. As DeEtta mentioned, my name is Myra Henry, a consultant and facilitator. And today I'm delighted to present a bit of information on dialogue circles and how they can be used as a tool to build engagement, competence, and confidence in an organization. During our time together, we will cover three main objectives: different types of dialogue circles, understanding facilitated dialogue, and tips for creating dialogue circles within your sphere of influence. And of course, time for questions and robust discussion at the end. So in our world today, to get us started, something we often like to do during DJA facilitated workshops is to have participants reflect on a topic or question as a guide. So right now, I'd like you to take a moment to think of an issue or pain point that is present in your life today, especially as you think of workplace pressures, such as the need to be culturally sensitive, having to deal with microaggressions, or increasing demands to learn new skills and work collaboratively across job functions. Or given our heightened political and social climate, managers not wanting to address employees due to fear of saying the wrong thing or being misunderstood. Okay, got something? Now, with that thought in mind, let me ask you a question. What is a practical strategy to learn more about your own thinking and a useful method to better understand the point of view of others, personally and professionally? So today we will discuss how dialogue circles can help build a common understanding and be used as an effective management tool to move an issue or project forward. So I love this quote. We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. It really speaks to us as humans, as individuals, each with our own lived experiences, backgrounds, and aspirations. We bring all of that into the room when we arrive, when we check in at work or show up to a meeting. And because we are all so different, which is a good thing, our view or perception of a situation may be very different from someone else's looking at the same situation. Dialogue circles or intergroup dialogue, and I will use these terms interchangeably, can provide a space for individuals to openly share their thinking and point of view without fear of judgment or retribution, especially if these thoughts don't align with the majority, for instance, topics on race or religion. In the circle, there is a space to challenge our own and others' thinking. Participants in dialogue circles are encouraged to ask questions in an effort to gain new or different perspective. Often during intergroup or dialogue circles, we will hear something that pierces our spirit or pushes us to look at long-held beliefs or a position differently. The goal of these group discussions is to use open-ended questions to reflect beyond what we know for sure. That type of reflection shows up when we can see something from someone else's point of view. Now, how does this show up in the workplace? Here's an example. A manager is holding a facilitated dialogue session to foster ideas to implement a new process. The facilitator asks open-ended questions like, share with the group how this change may impact your workday. And during the discussion, learns that several colleagues may not understand the need to change. These feelings may not have been surfaced without the space for them to speak openly about changes to their routine. Although the new initiative must be implemented, the concerned staff members were not silenced, but encouraged to lean into that feeling of discomfort and learn a new skill set for managing change. Dialogue circles can be used as a formal or informal tools to discuss a wide range of topics or solve a problem with a diverse group of people. Whether formal or informal, these types of intergroup dialogue sessions are structured events with the purpose to create an opportunity for individuals to experience a diversity of thought and perspective. Formal dialogue circles in the workplace are most effective when approved by leadership, with public support and resources. Public support can range from acknowledgement from leadership at a staff meeting about the importance of collaboration and engagement and using dialogue circles as a management tool to connect, to leadership taking an active role in the dialogue circles as a fully engaged participant. Formal dialogue circles are led by skilled facilitators with specific training on managing group conversations, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. I'll just mention briefly what informal dialogue circles look like from a personal perspective. We host dialogue circles quite often with my family and friends. These are intentionally themed events with a predetermined topic ranging from interpersonal relationships to politics. The conversations during formal and informal dialogue circles are guided by questions and insights from the participants that often interrupt the normal form of thinking or dialogue. So not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. And that's a quote from James Baldwin. Intergroup dialogue is where individuals meet in person, or in today's world, virtually, to participate in a facilitated discussion to confront a topic or issue in an effort to build a common understanding. In other words, dialogue circles are a place where issues can be faced in an effort to bring about change. There is a long history of dialogue circles on college and university campuses. Initiatives like Princeton's Dialogue and Discussions and the University of Michigan's Intergroup Relations Program have facilitated group discussions with faculty and students for more than 30 years. The University of Rochester, my home institution, has dialogue circles for faculty, students, and staff. The Paul J. Burgett Intercultural Center at UR hosts a variety of facilitated small group discussions with students on topics ranging from the intersection of identities to creating an inclusive campus community. UR also hosts diversity dialogue series for staff. Recently, staff members were encouraged to participate in a facilitated discussion on Michelle Obama's book, Becoming. So yes, a physical circle. There are benefits to sitting in a physical circle or as close to it as possible so that everyone can see, be seen, and heard. The physical act of sitting in a circle level sets the atmosphere, sends the message that everyone is on equal ground and everyone's participation is important and adds value. Dialogue circles as an effective management tool can be structured in such a way to encourage staff from all ranks to connect and share. So creating dialogue circles in the workplace are effective when they have support from leadership, as I mentioned earlier. Supported dialogue circles in the workplace should receive public support from leadership. This support could include paid time for non-exempt employees to attend a dialogue circle, or financial resources for materials, for refreshments, and in addition to the public statements. Creating dialogue circles in the workplace are effective when they are led by skilled facilitators. Depending on the topic, often people's emotions, thoughts, feelings, long-held beliefs, and work practices may be challenged, stirring up behaviors and emotions that have to be anticipated and managed. It is important that these discussions are guided by a skilled facilitator or a set of co-facilitators that have the responsibility to create and maintain the environment for people to share. Now, here are a few strategies used by skilled facilitators to move a conversation forward. Make everyone feel welcome, and that can be as easy as a warm greeting to everyone who walks into the room or who joins the conversation. Always start with introductions or an appropriate icebreaker to hear from everyone. This activity sets the expectation that everyone is encouraged to participate. Creating dialogue circles, one key is group participation. Getting everyone involved from the beginning is important to level setting the atmosphere. One way to get everyone involved from the start is by creating a set of group norms as a community to guide the discussion. Now, there are two group norms that I am sure to include in all group meetings that I participate in. The first one is step up, step back. This guiding principle serves two purposes: as a sense of encouragement for people who are more reserved to speak up, and for folks who are extroverted to take a second before jumping in a conversation to allow for other voices to contribute. The other group norm that I like to include is around confidentiality and lessons learned. What's said here stays here, and what's learned here leaves here. In other words, take the lesson, but leave the details in the room. Of course, there are other group norms that the community will generate and will govern your discussion. Now, in my work with diversity, equity, and inclusion, I am often paired with another facilitator of a different race and/or gender. At my home organization, we have started a dialogue series we call Hey, Let's Talk. This series of intergroup dialogue occurs 3 times a year as a complement to an all-staff diversity and inclusion workshop session. After the session, we schedule and announce several times for staff to gather in small groups, usually no more than 12 to 15 people, to engage in conversation around the topic introduced at the workshop. For instance, we have held dialogue circles on unconscious bias, active listening, and developing empathy. From the feedback we've collected, many of the participants said they were fully engaged and felt comfortable sharing openly with the group. Now let's take a moment to talk about the purpose of dialogue circles and how they lead to building confidence, competence, and engagement. It all starts with understanding dialogue as a tool for effective communication. According to noted scholar Edgar Schein, Dialogue as a method for collective learning, reflection, and inquiry can provide a process to move towards a common understanding. First, all participants in the circle, including the facilitator, must commit to set aside judgment. This is an individual act requiring folks to reflect and think for a moment before reacting. After a modicum of trust has been established in the group, with agreed upon meeting rules developed collectively at the beginning of the circle, participants can confront their assumptions and respectfully challenge others. During the intergroup dialogue, participants will be asked to challenge their own thinking, reflecting on those thoughts by using I statements. For example, after listening to my colleagues share their struggle with mobility, I did not realize how difficult it was for her to walk to her office without a ramp. Respectfully challenging others is encouraged in some dialogue circles, especially if the goal of the group is to establish a shared language, and that shared language could be understanding around a process. For example, I see this quite often when long-time employees are used to doing something one way, and new management or new direction call for it to be done differently. Engaging with the seasoned staff members on their experiences and sharing the organization's why for the change acknowledges the legacy practices in a way that can inform future practice. Both challenging others and confronting our own thinking may create extreme feelings of discomfort. While in the circle, we are encouraged to acknowledge and lean into that discomfort through dialogue. As author Stephen Covey has told us for years, from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, listen first to understand and then to be understood. Listening with the sole purpose of receiving another person's thoughts builds trust and connects us on another level to move towards common understanding. Again, these intergroup dialogue sessions require skilled facilitators to manage expectations and anticipate emotion or lulls in the conversation, and most importantly, keep the conversation moving. Now, dialogue circles build engagement by creating a space and opportunity for colleagues to connect from different departments or units. It creates an opportunity to share your story and learn from someone else's, and to participate in an atmosphere where people can reflect and grow. Dialogue circles build confidence by encouraging unsung staff to participate, generate ideas from across the organization, create an atmosphere for people to practice engaging with others in their truth. Dialogue circles build competence by increasing personal awareness, developing knowledge and new skills, and where competence lives, so does confidence. When people know more, they are willing to share more of themselves. So in closing, and this is before we open it up for conversation and dialogue amongst the group here, dialogue circles can be formal and informal facilitated dialogue sessions. The circle level sets the atmosphere where everyone's participation is valued around the circle, regardless of title, rank, or position. With a solid set of community-driven ground rules, this creates a space for participants to challenge their own thinking and respectfully challenge others in an effort to connect person to person and build common understanding. Now, as we prepare for discussion, as a reminder, and DeEtta mentioned this at the top of this session, I just want to remind everyone to be sure to check out DeEtta Jones and Associates' wide range of leadership and management workshops and trainings. They're online. You could also hit us up on whatever your social media platform is. So I have 2 questions for the group, and I'm interested in your feedback. How have you used dialogue or intergroup circles in your organization as a participant or facilitator? And how can participating in a dialogue circle address the issue you identified at the beginning of the session? And of course, any questions that people have, you can put them in the chat box, and I'll respond to them. Uh-oh. So I have to go back. All right, so do we have any questions or any thoughts around how intergroup, trying to get that off, I'm sorry, how intergroup dialogue circles can address the issue you identified at the beginning of the session? Okay, oh, all right, I see here. Okay, so we have one question here. What is the best way to initiate a dialogue circle? And one suggestion is talk to your manager. Yes, take the idea to your leadership with a topic. Yes, with a topic or idea, the expected audience, and also if there are resources required, like if you need to purchase materials, make copies, or things of that nature. But starting with your manager is always a good idea. Another question we have is, how long of a duration would you recommend a dialogue session be? It really depends. The first session should probably be no longer than an hour, and that really is typically the level set to get people comfortable. Certain topics take longer. The feedback that I've received in many of the sessions that I've done, especially with the topics around diversity, equity, and inclusion, people always want more time. So usually with a new topic or a really volatile issue, you want to start with 90 minutes. But if it's just getting a group of people together to kind of rally around a problem or to solve something, to get to know each other, an hour for the first meeting is enough. And then as a community, you kind of dictate how much time you need moving forward. All right, so I have another question here. I'm interested in using DCs to foster team building. For a work group that is struggling to communicate and connect, but how would you choose a topic? So again, bringing the group together and starting with those ground rules to really flesh out what the topic is and if there's multiple topics, prioritizing them. And that's something a skilled facilitator would be able to surface where your priorities should be if there's intergroup conflict. How can dialogue circles be fostered within client teams who have broken trust within the teams? Wow, what are some pre-discussion steps that can be taken to foster trust? Again, going back to square one, revisiting if the team started with some group norms or meeting rules, going back to those rules, so the very foundational tools that you put in place to build the team, and then making sure whatever the team is rallying around is center of that, and sticking to those meeting rules and group norms.
Myra, I'm going to jump in. This is DeEtta, and I'm going to jump in just to give you a moment to inhale, exhale, because the questions are coming in so fast and furious. Yeah, but one of the things that I wanted to mention also about this topic of building trust when it's been broken is don't wait until something is broken to start a dialogue circle. That's not the time to say, oh, we need a dialogue circle. The time to begin making a commitment to something like dialogue and the communication strategies associated with being more effective and being more transparent on an ongoing basis, to begin those practices is now, when nothing is broken, right? And then starting to give people an experience of positivity, of what the benefits are of interacting in this way, but also to be able to learn without the added stress of having a particular problem that you're trying to solve. And make sure that people understand that the purpose of dialogue is not to solve a problem or not to eradicate an issue in the organization. The purpose of dialogue is to learn and to grow. So, really don't wait until something is catastrophic and then put a dialogue circle into place. A dialogue circle won't fix that necessarily. It's really something that's meant to help build individual and organizational capacity over time, and then is a wonderful thing that you've already been doing. So when times get tough, you already have a space that people have cultivated together.
So thank you for that, DeEtta. There's another question here. Can you give us some examples of diversity, equity, and inclusion topics you've used for staff dialogue circles? And I mentioned briefly in the lecturette here at my home institution, we've started, and we don't call them dialogue circles, but it's exactly what it is. We call them, hey, let's talk. And it's ... So you fill in the topic. And those are diversity, equity, and inclusion driven conversations that typically follow up on a large all staff workshop or meeting. And for instance, this year, our theme is cultural humility. So we had a presenter come in. She did an all staff session on cultural humility. And from now until the end of the year, periodically, we will host and facilitate small group discussions around practical uses of cultural humility and what that looks like, and give people an opportunity to dig in a little deeper around a specific DE&I topic. So, all right, I'm sorry. I'm going through the questions and I'm reading them as they come in. For a team discussion, would you recommend an outside facilitator or keeping it only within the team? It really does depend on the situation. I would recommend, though, that a skilled facilitator lead the conversation. So someone who can ask open-ended questions and allow space for others to chime in and openly share, and can monitor the conversation without getting so involved that they're actually leading the conversation in one direction or the other, but giving people the chance to grow. So, okay, I'm moving down. Okay, you emphasize having an experienced facilitator. I understand the importance with some topics that can bring out strong emotions and discomfort, but can you do this more informally with the staff available in the organization? And yes, the two types of dialogue circles that I highlighted were informal and informal. And you can have informal discussions with folks. Again, I would have that would bring to surface where people can learn and grow. Make sure it's around some type of activity. And this is just a lighthearted activity that I've done in the past, where you literally, everyone has a peppermint. And the activity is called Mint to Share. And everyone takes that peppermint, everyone with the peppermint, they stand up and they share something about themselves. And again, the topic is really defined around the group. So that's lighthearted, it's fun, but it does get everyone involved and makes folks feel comfortable with sharing. So it can be done informally as well. Okay. Paying for a skilled facilitator can be difficult, especially before being able to demonstrate the value being gained. Any suggestions for moving forward without funding to get something going? So I'm actually going to kick this one to DeEtta because there are resources out there. DeEtta, can you address that one, please?
Sure. One of the things that we've actually done, and Myra has been part of this experience, is sometimes we work with our client organizations in order to help them build capacity for facilitating. And so we'll put them through kind of a train the trainer experience. And this can be, you know, a half-day segment or a session, or it can be 2 days. And there also needs to be kind of commitment over time to investing in developing your own skill, really being reflective, maybe working with a co-facilitator at the beginning. But it's absolutely something that is typical, that people do some sort of train the trainer investment, and then start off, like I said earlier, kind of at the shallow end of the pool. Don't start off dialogue circles, especially with new facilitators, around your knottiest KNOTT problems. You start off with things that are maybe more activity-based, like Myra was discussing, get people who are paired up and maybe have complementary strengths or experiences, and then help them develop some capacity over time. And where you have things that are more complicated, or where the emotions are potentially higher, or where you need to reach a decision around where there's potential for a lot of disagreement, then bringing in an outside facilitator is desirable. An outside facilitator does not need to be someone who's paid. You can find people who, you know, are in your community. Sometimes communities have people. If you're in a university setting, sometimes you can go to the university. It depends on what your setting is, but a lot of times you can find freely available facilitators who'd be willing to work with you to do something just to help you get started.
I think I lost my screen, so I apologize. I don't know what you all are looking at.
We're just looking at your name, no worries.
Okay, good. Good. So I'm still scrolling through the questions here, and I would like and encourage people to share any experiences that they've had with dialogue circles in the chat window. And I'd like to read those out amongst the group as well, because I think part of learning, part of presenting is also part of learning, and we can all learn from each other in these cases. So feel free to type in your experiences, and we'll share them with the group. So I'm just going back to the questions. It seems like one question here, it seems like these might work best if folks want to be part of the circle, but often with optional activities, you end up with the same subset of staff attending. Thoughts about requiring everyone to participate versus selecting participants. So one thing that we've done here in my home institution, not just my department, is there have been mandatory courses that we've had to take online. And then it has been strongly encouraged from our staff diversity office. There have been champions that go out that are either embedded within the departments that will work with individual folks and come up with creative ways to get people who don't necessarily join into these things, and that may be at a department meeting, that may be in smaller group sessions, and not just by invitation only. One of the things that, coming back to my home department, that we have found very useful is holding these sessions in places where we don't usually have meetings. So people who either feel like, oh my God, this is one more thing I gotta go to, we have something different. Whether it's someplace where we can gather around with coffee and donuts, or someplace where we can bring in music to change the atmosphere, but location matters so that people don't feel like they're just getting the same old, but it is an opportunity to learn, to increase their awareness and do something a little bit different. So can you give us some tools to keep a particularly difficult conversation from crashing and burning, redirecting overly negative statements? And I'll ask DeEtta to chime in on this one as well. But again, having a facilitator that is aware of what's going on in the room and kind of anticipating where the pitfalls are going to be. Now, you can't obviously control what people say, but we can redirect the conversation and make sure people are being governed, their discussion and their comments are being governed by the group norms and meeting rules that you set and established at the beginning and onset of the circle. DeEtta, you want to add anything?
Well, you captured it beautifully. Absolutely, the group norms are very, very, very important. And Myra, you've mentioned that a number of times on purpose, right? And so for folks who are on this webinar, please know that the group norms are absolutely essential, not just to establish them one time, but every single time you get together to revisit and make sure that we're on the same page with those. And then when something difficult happens, saying, okay, folks, consistent with our group norms, I'm going to ask that we really move the conversation to focusing back to the topic of what we are going to do in the future, to thinking about problem solving rather than blaming our colleagues, or rather than getting sidetracked by what could potentially be a negative conversation. And so really intervening directly and using the norms to help you with that intervention. If there's someone in the dialogue circle or in a meeting who says something that is particularly negative or harmful, you do not want to embarrass that person, but you do want to ask the behavior to stop. You do want to expect that behavior stop. And so you may say to the person, I'm going to ask you to not share comments like that in this space consistent with our group norms. And then I'm going to invite the rest of our colleagues to kind of move into this space and help us keep going with the agenda, right? So it can be something as gentle as that, but it's still very direct. direct and gentle all at the same time without ever trying to make a first person feel small or belittled. Let me tell you why. We live in a time right now where people are nervous about speaking up. People are nervous about saying something where they don't use exactly the right words. People are nervous about having an unpopular decision or experience or an opinion that they're willing to share. But the point of a dialogue circle is to elicit divergent points of view and to create a safe space for exploring differences and similarities and coming to a place where we can learn and grow. And so we as the facilitator have to practice that, and we have to model that for people if we want it to be something that we truly expect people to believe is our intention and is something that will incentivize them to stay in the conversation and also to come back over time.
Thank you. So I'm looking at another question here. Are there topics for newbies that you recommend that are softballs to build familiarity with the circle and comfort with the conversation? Absolutely. You can, these don't have to be, as DeEtta mentioned earlier, you don't want to wait till the building is burning to decide what the evacuation plan is going to be. You want to talk about, have these kind of open conversations and dialogue all the time where it becomes natural to an organization. And some topics could be around work practices. Some other topics could be around, things that are happening in, pop culture or what's happening in the world today. So you don't have to start hard and fast with something that is just a difficult topic for everyone, for anyone or everyone. And in the same respect, I would say, again, having facilitated conversations with questions, open-ended questions going into the conversations will help kind of guide where the conversation goes. Okay, I have one last question here. Oh, I'm sorry, maybe it's not. So someone is offering a suggestion actually to the earlier question about difficult conversations. And it says this helps to redirect the conversation with kindness while withholding the perception of judgment is an art, and that's true. And again, that's one of the main things as a participant in a dialogue circle, as well as the facilitator, is to suspend judgment so that we can listen openly and clearly and not go in with preconceived notions. Because a lot of times we need to be challenging our own thinking about certain things so that we can gain a different perspective and clarity. So that was our last question. If anyone has any other questions or thoughts, and again, I would really like to hear about how other folks have participated in dialogue or intergroup discussions and how they could see this working for themselves in their own organizations, in your own organizations.
Myra, I see a comment from Carla Streve. It says, can you walk us through a topic setup, open-ended questions, one from your experience? Can you give us a practical experience from beginning to end?
Oh, sure. And I'm sorry, I didn't see that. I was drinking some water.
Just came in.
So sure. So I'm going to walk you through again a topic from my own institution that we've used. And we use this across the institution, introducing unconscious bias, microaggressions, and cultural humility to staff at all levels, faculty, students, and staff across the organization. And we started with, on purpose, identifying mixed co-facilitators, and that they were either mixed gender pair, mixed racial pair, but they were two different people standing up in front of the group. And that was very much on purpose. The timing, building in timing, which was the session is about an hour and a half, giving about 20 to 30 minutes or so for each topic, making sure that people have practical takeaways, and then building in activities for each of those topics. So for unconscious bias, we use an activity called the Stroop effect. And we had people look at colors, and then the colors changed and they still had to read the names. And people started to kind of get a feeling of what unconscious bias feels like. We talk about it a lot, but how do you make that tangible for folks? So we incorporated activities that kind of made that concept real for folks. And then we went on to to introduce microaggressions and give real life examples of what that looks like as well, by building what we called a wiki article or a Wikipedia article on the impacts of microaggressions. Then finally, we wrapped up with cultural humility, and talked about how cultural humility can mitigate unconscious bias and microaggressions, and how that can be used in daily life. Again, leaving a lot of time for people to share in groups. Each group was about maybe 15, no more than 20 people. And 20 people is kind of getting kind of large, but giving people opportunity to share with each other and then coming back out and sharing with the group. So, yeah. All right, so just reiterating again, is there an ideal length of time? And typically at least an hour, because you're gonna need 10 to 15 minutes to get in the room, get comfortable. And if these are people who don't know each other, you're gonna need time to do an icebreaker or some type of introduction to each other so you can start to build trust, and then give time for a discussion after that.
Myra, I'm going to jump in just for a second on that last piece about the, kind of settling in. And one of the other things is, even if people do know each other, so even if this is a group of people that do know each other, it's useful for you as a facilitator to think about the little tips or tricks associated with effective facilitation. And one of the most effective tips associated with really having an effective shared space is giving everyone, as early as possible in a meeting or in a discussion, an opportunity for their voice to be in the room, your voice in the room. And so even if it's, okay, everyone, in advance of our dialogue session that we'll have tomorrow from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern, here's where we'll meet, and here are the 3 things that I'd like to invite you to think about and come prepared to talk about in advance. Right? So that kind of setup allows people to think about what they're going to say in advance. They know what the topic is, but also they have some kind of anchor questions that are in their mind, especially for people who are more introverted. It's so helpful for people to have a sense of what it is that they might want to share or contribute or be expected to share or contribute. Then as soon as people sit down, one of the very first exercises, even if it's not a brand new group, people still need to have their voice in the room. So spend the first 5 or 7 minutes at least just saying, okay, everyone share one thing. And you can decide what the right way to do that. If it's an icebreaker, a formal icebreaker where people are moving around, or people are sharing something cool that happened over the weekend, or people are sharing an experience that they had from a different part of their life, or a recent experience on the topic at hand, but something that requires every single person to have a voice in the space. If it's a 15 or 20 person group, it doesn't have to be that every single person reports out to the whole group. You could get people together in dyads or triads, 2s or 3s, to do that sharing and then do a quick report out. But getting your voice in the room immediately is really helpful, because then it turns from the facilitator's space to a shared space, which is really what you're looking for. So that couple of minutes at the beginning is really necessary, which is why taking it to 60 minutes is a useful idea. Even if you have 45 minutes worth of discussion, you'll still want a good 10 minutes up front and a good 5 minutes at the back to give that, to kind of begin and end well.
Absolutely. And just to add on to that just a little bit, when we do have groups where there's a mixed group of folks, and some of the people may know each other and some of the people may not, we intentionally ask people to sit with folks that they don't know. Just find an opportunity to engage and introduce yourself to someone that you're not familiar with, even though you may see them in the hallway every day, but may have never have had a conversation with them. So we have 2 examples here of how folks have used or participated in dialogue circles. And one is a discussion on a topic like microaggressions, where they watched a short video to define the topic, and then had smaller group discussions, then had smaller groups discuss, with question prompts and facilitators at each group, and then a large group share out. And that's what DeEtta just kind of explained and took us through. And the other one here says how they participated in a intergroup dialogue discussion. Framing the topic of conversation clearly and repeatedly was an essential reason the circle was successful. And as we strayed from the topic, different members of the circle were empowered to guide us back. And again, that speaks to having those group norms created by the community. So anyone in that circle, everyone is responsible for keeping the community and keeping the conversation and dialogue going on. And they all are empowered to go back to, hey, this is what we agreed of, this is what we agreed how the conversation would be run. Here are our meeting rules and group norms. All right, so I think I've gone through all of the questions. If you all have any other questions or thoughts or ideas, you please hit us up on DeEttaJones.com. We are all available and excited and would be more than willing to answer your questions, give you more information about our products and service offerings. And before I sign off, DeEtta, do you have a last word?
I just want to say thank you for everyone for showing up and just taking time out of your busy day to just be part of this discussion. And please, let's keep the discussion going. We'll share with you the series calendar so that you have the schedule for the next webinars. Please continue to join. Let us know if they're useful. We also are going to be organizing them on our new YouTube channel that we'll also send to you in a follow-up email. We would love for you to bring us into your organization or to work with us to help you continue to develop your leadership skills or anything that might be of use to you in your organizational change capacity. Thank you, everyone. Loved it. And thank you, Myra. Fantastic.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Oh, you're almost there too.